Did Brad Holmes just kind of give away the Detroit Lions offseason plans? That's what we are going to be discussing in this video on a rumor or on an interview that he had on 97.1 The Ticket. He actually gave away quite a bit of his plan, and I think it's awesome. I absolutely love it. It gives us something to talk about in February. Thank you so much, Brad Holmes. So let's actually go in and have a conversation about what was discussed. We're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about the extra 10 million or 15 million, whatever, depending on your report, that every team got based on the salary cap, what his plan is to do with that. We are going to touch on what he likes about drafting late in rounds, actually that he likes more than drafting early in the top 10. He actually enjoys the position they're in more now. And we're going to talk about, does the plan change this year because the team is closer than ever to having success? And the answer overall is kind of a resounding no. He's not going to change. So here's a couple of things that he said. We'll reference a couple of different articles. He was on 97.1 The Ticket with Costa and Jansen with Heather. And Jim Costa actually used to be here. We're on the west side, and he was here with it. But so I know a lot about him. But he said when you are budgeting in advance for free agency, and especially when you're looking past your own free agents, you probably have a good decision on what you want to do internally with your own players in terms of re-signs and extensions and all that kind of stuff. So first things first, before he's looking to go spend money, he knows what he wants to do with the re-signs. That isn't just this year, people. That's not just this year. That is going into next year and the year after that and the year after that. If he knows that there is a good chance they are going to re-sign Jared Goff and St. Brown and Penei Sewell to long-term contracts, he needs to factor that in when he's talking about going out and signing another ones. And by the way, at the end of this video, I'll give you what I expect to happen this offseason. And it doesn't mean it's fact, okay? It doesn't mean it's fact, but what I expect. So here's what he went on to say. When you look externally, which I think that's where you have to be the most careful, when you go externally is where you might want to open up, Holmes said. Do you want to externally say, well, we can go get another depth player here on external ad? Or do you want to say, well, we had these handful of players that we were looking to add from an external standpoint. Now that we have this much more available, then maybe we can get a bigger fish, ? So it sounds to me like he starts, and he does this often. He starts with the truth, which the truth is, do you want to get a depth player with an external ad? Do you want to get a role player, something like that? And then at the end, he's like, oh, maybe we can get a bigger fish, right? I don't think he wants to get a bigger fish. I think he's very happy where he is. All right. He also said this. He has an idea of where the team wants to go with the extensions of players, but will not provide updates on Jared Goff and others' contract situation until the process is completed. We're not going to hear anything about it, but he knows where he wants to go, which means that he knows where he's going to go in free agency. All right. He said he will continue to draft based on talent over need. He said free agency is more of a needs-based approach than the draft. Okay, so let's look into that too. He also expressed confidence in kicker Michael Badgley, but said there will be competition this offseason. In other words, they're going to bring another kicker in. We've heard this before. We've seen this. He views the NFL Combine as a way to check athletic boxes, but finds more value in the character evaluations through interviews. If you haven't seen Inside the Den, there was an episode where they were doing all the interviews with different players, and it gave a ton of insight into what the Lions are looking for, and that was honestly pretty cool. It was really, really cool. So what does all this mean? And I'm even going to go ahead of this, and then I'm going to talk about the other stuff that he talked about with draft position. So here's what I think is going to happen this offseason. I think they're going to spend $4 or $5 million here, $6 or $7 million there, maybe a $10 million contract somewhere, right? And that's it. And then I think they're going to fill those immediate needs, and they are going to then draft the most talented players available. I think Brad Holmes absolutely trusts his ability to draft. I think he knows that the best value you get for your buck when you hit on a draft pick, it can be so much more valuable than if you hit on a free agent. Because if you're hitting on if you're hitting on a free agent, you're already paying them. Whereas a draft pick has a much higher upside. Is there a greater bust potential? Of course there is. But it's with almost no money. So you would much rather go out and spend those types of resources than go out and honestly get rid of a ton of money in free agency. So here's what he said about his time with the Rams. Now, if you noticed, with the Rams, they for a long time didn't even have a first-round pick. They were basically like, who cares about first-round picks? We don't need them. We'll just worry about those in the future. And so Brad Holmes naturally said, I will say I feel comfort and in that, and I found a lot of comfort in not only picking later, maybe not even having a first-round pick back in my tenure with the Rams. He said, Brad Holmes, I find more excitement in it. I feel when you're looking at the top 10, it's kind of hard to mess up, in my opinion. Yet the Giants do it every single year. All right, but you've got really good players, and you're trying to decide between Turks and Caicos and the Grand Cayman. All right, it's true. And he has proven that later in the draft. You look at this year when you're talking about late picks, just this year. Not the early first-round picks, right? Not the Jahmyr Gibbs, not even Jack Campbell. But you're talking Laporta and then Brian Branch in the second round. Those are starters, high-quality players, already some of the best in the business, and he picked them up later. We have a ton of those picks. We have 4 in the top 100. That's where you make your money, not necessarily just in the top 10, right? Because if you're in the top 10, you don't like how you got there. All right, he went on to say, he said, you're probably not going to be mad at either one, but I think it's a lot more excitement when you're back there on the back end because you've got to deep dive it a lot more. You've got to really heavily scrutinize, and it's a lot of fun. He said, back in my time with the Rams, we found a lot of good players in those rounds, not even in the first round, but in day 2. I think we've proved that we can do that here as well. I don't have any angst about not having that high pick. I'm actually excited. Yes, you're excited because you have good players on your roster because you had a good enough team to get you there. All right, so what does it look like? What are the types of things that we can do in order to get a good player? And I'll probably make another video on this, something like this. In Bleacher Report, they did a thing where they did a potential trade between the Lions and the Bills to get Rasul Douglas because the Bills need cap space. And they said that we'd send a 3rd rounder and they'd send Rasul Douglas and a 6th rounder to us. Personally, I think it should just be a 4th rounder, but this would cost us about $9 million and it would save them about $9 million. That is about, I think, the most that you're going to see Holmes spending. I would be surprised. I'm not saying I'd be angry, but I would be surprised if Brad Holmes goes out and spends $20 million on Snead or Johnson or at premier edge rusher. I would be surprised by that. I would think that he would fill immediate needs and hope to draft that. I do think if one or the other was more likely, it would be an edge rusher that he would go out and sign via free agency. And I'll do another video later talking about which edge rushers you can get at that $10 to $15 million price point if you don't want to go all the way up to that $20 million price point. So, all right, hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you on the next one.